Hey there. So for this one, when we're trying to find the equation of a polynomial like that, we have basically two things we need to work out. And one is the behavior at these zeros. So we're going to set up our factors, x plus or minus something, depending on what those zeros are. And then remember, when they cross, they're going to be to the first power, or they're an odd power, and when they bounce like that, they're going to be an even power. When we're looking at a graph like this, we're told that it's going to be to the first or to the second, so we don't have to consider higher powers on that. And then the other thing, so what's going on at the x-intercepts is the bit with all the parentheses and the squares or knots. The other thing we have to figure out is what that coefficient is in front, what it would be like the stretch factor. So we have this y-intercept here where we can use that to find the stretch factor. So let's write down what we know. We know we have an x at -2, a 0 at -2, and I'm going to put a little c there for that one as crossing. We have an x at -1, and again that one is going through the intercept, so I'll put a little c there for that one as crossing. And then we have an intercept at x equals 4, and that one is bouncing because we're coming up, we're not passing through it, we're coming up, bouncing off it, coming back down. And then the last bit of information we have is a y-intercept at, what is that, 0, -4. So basically how this is going to look is y equals, I'm just going to use a out front. I'm trying to remember if I used k in the notes or if I used a. I'll use a just for the sake of the video. Might have been a k. And they'll set up each of these factors. So if -2 is a 0, then x plus 2 is a factor. Because remember, the zeros and the factors have opposite signs, because when we solve this, we would say x plus 2 equals 0. We subtract the 2 over and get the negative. This is crossing, so that's to the first. X equals -1, so that means I would have a factor of x plus 1, because -1 makes that 0. Again, crossing, so that's to the first. And then this last one would be x minus 4, because if x equals 4, 4 minus 4 would make that 0. And that one was a bounce, so that will be squared. And then we use this y-intercept. We now have kind of the framework for the function, but I need to figure out what that constant is in front. Any function of this form could have these zeros, but dependent on how high and how low these turns are, that's what's determining the a. So if I have just a single point on the function, then I can plug in the x and the y and then use that to solve for a. So that's what I'll do now. So I know when x is 0, y is -4. So putting in the -4 for that y, a is what I'm trying to work out. And then it's great when they give you that intercept, because if the x is 0, 0 plus 2, that's just 2, so it just drops out all those x's and leaves the numbers. So that would be a 1 right there. I'll just write it so it doesn't disappear. Not necessary though. 0 minus 4 would be -4, and then careful not to lose that squared, and people do that a lot. So -4, and then let's see, -4 squared would be 16, positive, because we're squaring the negative, and 16 times 2 would make 32a, and then I'll divide over the 32, and I have -4 over 32 equals a, and then as always, if we can reduce a fraction, we should. So this would be like -1 times 4 and -8 times 4, so reducing a 4 out, and I get a equals -1/8. So final answer on this one is going to be y equals -1/8, x plus 2, x plus 1, and x minus 4 squared. It's not very good squared. And then just to kind of run this backwards for a second, if I were looking at this and asked to graph it, I would say, and so for this problem, this is it. That's your y of x equals is right here. But just to kind of check myself, x equals -2, x equals -1, x equals 4. It's 2, 3, 4. It's a negative x to the 4th essentially, so it should be upside down like that. I should be crossing at -2. I am, because I can also, where you get this, you have to graph it. I should be crossing at -1 and then bouncing off of 4. and the shape is right for the equation I wrote. So just as sort of a check that my answer makes any sense. Hopefully that helps.